fans, it's EaglefanKarl, and this is going to be my prediction video for the game Thursday night against the Atlanta Falcons. But of course, the exciting thing that's going to be happening Thursday night is the Eagles are going to be raising their championship banner at Lincoln Financial Field. As the Super Bowl champions, the Eagles have the right to host the NFL Kickoff night for Thursday night to honor the Super Bowl team one last time before the season really gets on in earnest. And we do that by raising the championship banner. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do here in my office. I've got a banner, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to raise the banner here in the office. So there we go. That's going to be a permanent part of the office now, and we'll always have a remembrance of the Eagles winning Super Bowl 52. And of course, if you didn't notice, I've also got my Zach Ertz Super Bowl 52 jersey on today for the commemoration of celebrating the Super Bowl that we won last February. But of course, now it's time to move on to the new season. And that means a new set of games and some new predictions that we've got to look at. First, before I get into the specifics of the Eagles-Falcons game, I do want to talk about the season as a whole and sort of what I think. If you saw the last video I did on whether or not I think the Eagles could repeat, I gave my predictions for the division in terms of where I think the teams will finish in the division. But I talked a lot in that video about the conference and how difficult I think the conference is once we get into the playoffs. So I wanted to talk about who I think is going to make the playoffs from the conference and also the AFC. So sort of taking a look at the NFL as a whole. I've never done predictions for the whole conference before, or the whole league before, in terms of who's going to win divisions and wild cards. But I figured I'd go ahead and take a shot this year. So for starters, like I said, that's the prediction I came up with for the NFC East. I do think the Eagles will go ahead and win the division. I didn't talk about it as much in the last video, but I think the team that's going to give us the most competition is actually the Giants, which seems sort of crazy given the fact that they were 3-13 last year. But they had a real problem with their injuries, and their offense was very one-dimensional. That is not going to be the case this year. They're getting their wide receivers back, and of course they've got Saquon Barkley. And if there's any one position that rookies can really help turn around a team in quickly, it usually is the running back position. We saw that a couple of years ago with the Cowboys and Ezekiel Elliott. So I really think that the Giants are going to be the team to beat in the division this year. I think the Eagles probably split with them. I think we probably lose that first game on Thursday night in North Jersey. But then later in the season, when we play them back to the Link, I think we'll beat them then. So I think that's sort of a split. But ultimately, I think the Giants are a little bit weaker on their offensive line to really compete for a whole season. And like I said, this division has a tough schedule with the teams we've got to play. We've all got to play the teams in the NFC South, 3 of which made the playoffs last year. And we're also all going to have to play the teams in the AFC South, 2 of which made the playoffs this year. And as you'll see in a minute, I'm going to predict 2 teams from the AFC South are going to get to the playoffs this year. So I think all those things combined are going to make it really hard for any other team from the NFC East to get to the playoffs. But I do think the Eagles win the division, and they're the representative as the division champs in the playoffs. As far as the rest of the NFC is concerned, in the NFC North, I think the Packers will come back with a vengeance this year. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be really wanting to make a statement for lost time as far as what he lost last year with the injury. So I think he's really going to want to make a statement. So I could see the Packers getting far in their quest to try and win that division. So I think they will win that division. The other division I think is really sort of easy to call is the NFC West, which I had said before. I think the NFC West is going to have a down year. I think a lot of those teams are going to struggle this year. I know, everyone's all high on Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers because he didn't lose a start last year. But he's going to come back down to earth. Teams are going to have a year to really sort of game plan for him now. So I expect him to take a step back. And I also think that just generally, that NFC West as a whole is on the weaker side. Russell Wilson is probably one of the better quarterbacks in that division, but he's got no one around him. So I think the Rams win that division and win it rather easily, and that's one of the concerns I have actually about the Eagles this year with what we're going to be dealing with in terms of getting home field advantage is the Rams are going to have 6 games against those 3 teams, which I think are really down. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the Rams don't go 5-1 in their division games, whereas I think I have the Eagles going 4-2 in our division games. So as a result, I really sort of see that that's going to be a little bit problematic for the Eagles, is the fact that the Rams are going to have a lot easier division schedule. The final division is the NFC South, and that one's a little harder to call. I could see the Saints or Falcons winning that. I don't put as much stock in the Panthers, but I could see the Saints or Falcons winning that division. For now, I'm going to go ahead and go with the Falcons because I think as a team as a whole, they're better. I think the Saints got lucky with their defense last year, and I still think the defense is suspect. So I would expect that the Falcons ultimately are going to prevail in that division. As far as the wild card is concerned, I talked about how the NFL does its scheduling in the last video I did, and as a result of that, the whole NFC North is going to be playing the NFC West, and I think that's going to make things a little easier for them. And I could definitely see a situation where they are going to put 2 wild card teams in the playoffs as a result of that. So I see the Packers winning that division, but then I also see the Vikings being right there with them, and I think they're the number 1 wild card. The second wild card is going to be, every year there's a team that sort of comes out of the blue that really sort of surprises you in terms of the turnaround that they have. And for me, that's going to be the Chicago Bears this year. I know people might think I'm crazy on that, but I think the Bears actually will compete this year. I think the addition of Khalil Mack is going to be that one piece on defense that they really needed to sort of get better. And they've got Mitch Trubisky is going to have another year now, and he's now got a good quarterback coach, a head coach that's more geared towards quarterbacks that I think will really be able to help him. So I think he's going to take a step forward. And they've got a good running game anyway. So I think all those things will translate to some success for them. I think enough to get them into that second wild card spot. I don't think they really do anything in the playoffs, but I think they're going to take a leap forward and as a result make the playoffs from that division. So what about the AFC? I'll go ahead and take my shot with the AFC as well. There's one that you just always pencil in. It's pretty easy. The AFC East is going to probably get won by the Patriots again. I can't see any reason why that's going to be any different this year. I think the Bills, they made the playoffs last year, but I think they take a big step back. The Jets are going to be starting out with a rookie quarterback, so I don't expect a lot from them, especially early in the season. And maybe he starts getting better as the season goes on, but they're probably going to dig themselves too much of a hole early on. And the Dolphins, I think, are a mess. So I think the Patriots are going to win that division relatively easily. In the AFC North, sort of the same thing. I think the Steelers are in a weaker division, and they're going to have no problem winning that division again. The AFC South is a little more interesting. I think the Jaguars are a legitimate team. I don't believe in Blake Bortles as a franchise quarterback, but I think he's good enough with what they have on defense and Leonard Fournette running the ball that he can do just enough to allow them to win games. So I think the Jaguars will once again win that division. And in the AFC West, I think the Chargers are really going to take a step forward this year. I think Phillip Rivers knows that he's getting towards the end of his career, and he's really going to have to take a shot to try and win now. And I think the Chargers recognize that, and I think the team will sort of rally around that. They really came on late at the end of last season, but just fell a little short of making the playoffs. But I could absolutely see the Chargers winning that division, especially because I think the Chiefs take a step back a little bit starting Mahomes. I think that might be better for them in the long term. But I think this season they probably take a step back. That said, I think the Chiefs are good enough to get into a wild card, so I'll go ahead and put them in a wild card spot. And the other team that I'm going to go ahead and put in the wild card is the Texans from the AFC South. I think that they're good enough to get there, and they're going to have the luxury of playing against the AFC East while they have the Patriots. They have a lot of other weak teams as well, so I think that they could absolutely make a great play for the other wild card spot. One other thing I should note on that, I was talking about the AFC East in terms of the AFC South playing. Like I said, other than the Patriots, I think there's 3 beatable teams. And when it comes to the NFC, and my reason why I thought the NFC North was going to be up this year, they play both the NFC West and the AFC East, who are probably the 2 weakest divisions in football. So that's the other reason why I've got 3 teams from that division going into the wild card. But let's go ahead and get back to the season opener and what I think is going to happen with this opener. And of course, we've got to sort of talk about the elephant in the room, and that's going to be who's the starting quarterback. Just as I was getting ready to film this, I saw the notification come on my phone that the Eagles have officially announced that Nick Foles will be the starter. And that was sort of what I was expecting based on some of the things that had happened over the last week. Carson Wentz still has not been cleared for contact in practice, so it would have shocked me to see Carson Wentz start in this game. Frankly, I think there's no reason to rush him back. This is probably of the first quarter of the season. This is probably the hardest game we've got. And I wouldn't want to rush him back for this. And if you're not going to rush him back for this one, then I think we absolutely sort of take our time with the next couple until we know he's absolutely back at 100%. He's got a whole career in front of him. There's no reason we need to have a setback with his injury by having something fluky happen when he comes back, if he comes back too early. Just ask, Washington fans that live around me about RG3 and what happened with him. I think that, they certainly know what can happen if you rush a quarterback too soon. And I think Carson Wentz is obviously a much better quarterback than RG3 would have been, even if he had stayed healthy. But still, there's no reason to rush a player back before they're ready when they are that important to the future of the franchise for the next decade. Go ahead and talk about the opener against the Falcons and actually talk about the X's and O's and, who's got the better advantage. I really look at the way we played them the last two times we played them. We played them the last two seasons. In 2016, we played them in the regular season, and of course in 2017, we played them in the playoffs. Both times, the defense had a really good game. In the regular season game in 2016, we held them to 15 points. Then, of course, last year in the playoffs, we held them to 10 points. And the main reason we did that, the defense played well, but the other thing that really helped our defense in both those games is we played ball control on offense. We really sort of, stuck to the running game in 2016, and in 2017 we were running the ball and running those RPOs, and Nick really started to get his rhythm in the second half, and even though we didn't put up a lot of points ourselves in that game, we were able to move the ball and control the ball. And of course, the thing that does is it keeps Matt Ryan and Julio Jones on the sideline, and that's one of the best ways to beat them is don't let them on the field very much. So I think that the Eagles will probably approach this game the same way. In some ways, I hate to say this, maybe it's a mixed blessing that Nick Foles is going to be starting this game because I think it's going to force Doug to do that. I think he's going to recognize that you saw even in the Minnesota game, he was able to open things up more against the Vikings because I don't think he was worried about the Vikings offense. Against the Falcons in that division game, he took a couple deep shots, but for the most part, he tried to play short passes and ball control. And I think that was about trying to maintain time of possession to keep the Falcons' offense on the sideline. I think that if you've got someone like Nick Foles behind center in this game, I think you're much more likely to try and do that kind of thing and run that kind of game. And I think our offensive line, as we've shown, is good enough to be able to do that, and I certainly think that we will be able to do that. Of course, the other thing that does is it sort of eliminates the whole issue of exactly what happens with the wide receivers and the wide receivers being banged up. I think that we'll be able to make enough plays in the passing game with our tight ends and running backs out of the backfield that the Falcons are going to have to keep honest on that and not just load the box. But I do expect that the Eagles will try and run the ball for a good portion of the game and try and maintain the clock. And if they do that, I think the Eagles can win this game. And maybe I'm picking more with my heart than my head on this. But I think the Eagles will do that, and I think they will win the game. I think that if we keep the Falcons with that game plan, if we keep the Falcons below 20 points, we will win this game. So for that reason, my prediction of a score is going to be Eagles 23, Falcons 17. Let me know if you think the Eagles are dead in this game because they don't have Carson Wentz, or if you think we're going to be able to blow them out, even with Nick Foles. Also, if you have predictions for the season as far as the NFL is concerned, let me know what those are, and of course predictions for the game. I'll go ahead and check in after it, and the one exciting thing about this is I will actually be at the Lincoln Financial Field on Thursday night. The guy I used to sit next to who had when I had season tickets let me know a couple days ago that he had an extra ticket to the game, and he asked me if I wanted to go. Obviously, jumped at the chance to go and see the Eagles raise the banner, so I'll be excited to see that. Maybe I can incorporate some video and pictures that I take that night from the game into my reaction video. I'll check in after the game. Until then, fly Eagles fly.